It was a quiet July morning at Fort Liberty, North Carolina. The air was already thick with summer heat. But something was wrong. Sergeant James Callahan, a man known for his discipline, missed his morning formation. He was an Army Ranger, the best of the best. His bunk was neat, his uniform ready, yet James was nowhere to be found. His commanders were immediately concerned. This was not like him at all. James was a leader, a soldier who lived by the clock and by the code. His absence sent a ripple of unease through the base. It was a mystery that started with a simple, unanswered roll call. The initial search began with a sense of urgency. His fellow soldiers fanned out across the sprawling military base. They checked the training grounds, the barracks, and the local hangouts. His fiancée, Sarah Jensen, was frantic. She told investigators they had plans for the weekend. They were going to look at wedding venues. She couldn't understand why he would just disappear. To her, and to everyone in his unit, James was the picture of stability. A man with a bright future, both in the military and at home. The first 24 hours passed with no sign of him, and the worry grew heavier with each passing hour. Investigators started looking for any clue, any lead. They pulled surveillance footage from the gates of Fort Liberty. And there it was, a grainy image from late the previous night. It showed James getting into a civilian vehicle, a dark sedan. He didn't look forced or distressed, he seemed to go willingly. But who was driving the car? The license plate was unreadable, obscured by the glare of the camera lights. This small detail was the first sign that Sergeant Callahan's life might not have been as straightforward as everyone believed. The man in that video hinted at a world beyond the uniform. The community held its breath. At Fort Liberty, soldiers are family. The news of a missing ranger was a heavy blow. Friends described James as a rock, someone you could count on in the toughest situations. He had served 2 tours overseas and earned medals for his bravery. He was the guy you wanted by your side when things got tough. Now he was the one in trouble, and the people who loved him felt helpless. The search expanded beyond the base, into the towns and forests surrounding it. But as days turned into a week, hope began to fade, replaced by a gnawing fear that something terrible had happened to Sergeant James Callahan. The investigation took a sharp turn when detectives looked into James's personal life. They started with his phone records. The calls revealed a story far different from the one everyone knew. There were hundreds of texts and calls, not to his fiancée Sarah, but to another woman. Her name was Maria Flores, a local artist he had been seeing for nearly a year. Maria told police that James had promised to leave Sarah for her. He told her he felt trapped, that his life as a soldier and a fiancé was not what he truly wanted. The perfect soldier, it seemed, was living a complicated double life, torn between duty, love, and secrets. Sarah Jensen was confronted with this painful revelation. At first, she denied it. She showed police loving text messages from James, photos of them smiling together. But the evidence was undeniable. The detectives' questions grew more pointed. They learned that Sarah had discovered a secret email account James used to communicate with Maria just days before he vanished. Their perfect relationship was a lie. This discovery shifted the focus of the investigation. Was this a case of a man running away from his problems? Or did a lover's quarrel turn violent? Sarah was now more than a grieving fiancée. She was a person of interest. Then came another discovery. Near Carver's Creek, a popular fishing spot about 20 miles from the base, a local found a discarded military-style boot. It was James's size. A full-scale search of the area was launched. Soon, investigators found more. A patch of disturbed earth. And nearby, partially buried, was a tarnished silver locket. Sarah confirmed it was the one she had given James for their anniversary. The case was no longer about a missing person. It was now a homicide investigation. The grim reality set in. Sergeant Callahan was not coming home. The search was now for a body and a killer. The focus on James's love life also brought his family under scrutiny. Specifically, his estranged brother, Daniel Callahan. Daniel lived just an hour away but had not seen James in over 2 years. Friends said there was bad blood between them, something about an old family dispute over money and respect. When detectives first interviewed Daniel, he seemed unconcerned. He claimed he had no idea where his brother was and didn't much care, but his alibi for the night James disappeared was weak. He said he was home alone, watching TV. There was no one to confirm his story. The web of secrets was growing wider and the list of suspects was getting longer. The investigation into Daniel Callahan began to intensify. Detectives dug into his background and found a man drowning in debt and resentment. Daniel had always lived in his brother's shadow. James was the hero, the successful soldier. Daniel was a failed mechanic, with a string of bad investments. Financial records showed that Daniel had recently asked James for a large loan, but James had refused. The refusal had led to a series of angry text messages, with Daniel accusing James of abandoning his family. The motive was becoming clear. It was a toxic mix of jealousy and greed. The forgotten brother was now the primary suspect. The key piece of evidence came from an unexpected source: a cell tower ping. On the night James went missing, Daniel's phone had pinged a tower near Carver's Creek, the exact area where the boot and locket were found. This directly contradicted his story of being home all night. When confronted with this new information, Daniel's calm demeanor cracked. He became agitated and defensive. His story began to change. He admitted he had met with James that night. He claimed they just talked, that James had agreed to give him the money and then left with someone else. But the lie was transparent. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when investigators searched Daniel's truck. Hidden under the seat cover, they found microscopic traces of blood. DNA testing confirmed it was a match for Sergeant James Callahan. The dark sedan from the surveillance footage was also traced back to Daniel. He had borrowed it from a friend. The evidence was overwhelming. Daniel had lured his brother to a remote location with the promise of reconciliation. But his plan was far more sinister. He had murdered his own brother, the man he had envied his entire life, for nothing more than a bruised ego and a desperate need for cash. In the end, Daniel confessed. He told investigators the whole story in a cold, detached voice. He had confronted James, and the argument had escalated. In a fit of rage, Daniel had struck his brother, leading to his death. He then buried the body in a shallow grave in the woods, hoping it would never be found. He had stolen James's wallet and a few personal items, a pathetic reward for such a heinous act. The respected soldier, the decorated ranger, had not been killed by an enemy on a foreign battlefield. He was betrayed and murdered by his own flesh and blood, a brother consumed by a lifetime of bitterness. The news of Daniel's arrest and confession sent shockwaves through the Fort Liberty community. It was a brutal and unbelievable end to a story that had gripped them for weeks. Soldiers who had served with James were left stunned. They had faced death alongside him in combat zones, but they could never have imagined such a threat waiting for him at home. The sense of betrayal was profound. It wasn't just that a soldier had been killed, it was that the killer was family. The case served as a harsh reminder that the most dangerous enemies are sometimes the ones who know you best, the ones who share your name. The tragedy forced a difficult conversation within the military community about the unseen struggles soldiers face. James Callahan had projected an image of strength and control, yet his personal life was in turmoil. He was caught between two women, hiding a secret life from his fiancée and his unit. This internal conflict made him vulnerable. His story highlighted the immense pressure on soldiers to appear perfect, to never show weakness. It raised questions about the mental health support available to them, and whether more could be done to help soldiers navigate the complex challenges of life off the battlefield, where the rules of engagement are not so clear. For the Callahan family, the pain was unimaginable. They had lost one son to a senseless act of violence and another to a prison cell. The story was a testament to the destructive power of unresolved family conflict. The jealousy and resentment that Daniel harbored for years had festered in silence, finally erupting in the worst way possible. It was a stark lesson in how unspoken pain and long-held grudges can destroy a family from the inside out. The very bonds that should have provided support had become the source of a deadly betrayal, leaving only sorrow and regret in their wake. In the end, the story of Sergeant James Callahan is more than just a true crime tale. It's a tragedy about the hidden wars we all fight. A decorated hero, admired for his courage, was ultimately brought down not by a bullet, but by the quiet corrosion of secrets and the bitter poison of family jealousy. His death serves as a somber reflection on the fact that sometimes the most perilous dangers are not in the distant lands where soldiers serve, but in the conflicted landscapes of the human heart. It reminds us to look beyond the uniform, beyond the surface, and to recognize the silent personal battles that even the strongest among us may be fighting.